me some time to get my presentation.
Bear with us. We good?
Okay, great. Okay, sorry about that. So as was mentioned, this is the mobile home process overview ordinance amendment. Just to clarify, this is really for the purposes of complying with LD 337, which was a law that was adopted back in 2024. It was called an act to amend the law governing the regulation of manufactured housing to increase affordable housing. Essentially, what this does is it changes what the prior law had, which was that municipalities must allow manufactured housing in certain locations. The prior law said at least one zoning district on undeveloped lots where single-family dwellings are allowed. This clarifies that manufactured housing includes both mobile homes, so traditional mobile homes, and then also manufactured homes under the same definition. LD 337 further clarified and requires that a municipality allow manufactured housing, including both mobile homes and modular housing, wherever single-family dwellings are allowed, all zoning districts, regardless of whether or not mobile home parks are allowed in all zoning districts. It does allow that you can have certain design criteria that the municipality might establish for single-family dwellings. So just to reiterate, essentially, for the purposes of complying with the law, mobile homes and modular housing are considered one and the same, both with themselves, but then also with traditional stick-built single-family dwellings. It does, again, the law allows for some certain allowable design standards, including but not limited to a pitched shingled roof, a permanent foundation, and exterior siding that is residential in appearance, so long as the requirements don't have the effect of circumventing the law that was adopted by the legislature, and then also that the design requirements are not used to prevent the relocation of any manufactured housing, regardless of its date of manufacture, legally sited within the community as of August 4th, 1988. So just to summarize the proposed changes to the ordinance that's before you, again, this is expressly to comply with state law adopted by the legislature and signed by the governor back in 2024. So we have changed in our local ordinances, the definitions found in Article 2. We essentially, as the law does, combines the definition of mobile home and manufactured housing by simply referencing state law as the definition. We also changed the definition of a manufactured home park to align with state subdivision statute, which is 3 or more manufactured houses, mobile homes or modular homes, rather than the current 2 or more that is referenced in our ordinance. And then we also changed the schedule of uses to remove all references to mobile home park and made it manufactured home parks consistent with the state statute, and then that new local definition. And then there are a variety of changes in our performance standards related to manufactured housing. So we clarified that manufactured housing, the new definition, is allowed on any individual lot where single-family homes are an allowed use under our current schedule of uses. Manufactured home parks as a use shall be located only in districts where this land use is explicitly allowable per the schedule of uses. And I didn't make any changes to that with these set of amendments. I also had a minor clarification around the mobile home or manufactured home being on or affixed to a foundation or concrete slab. We didn't necessarily have affixed to as a requirement before, but we have added that. We replaced the requirement for a 14-foot width to an 8-foot width, again, to align with the new state statute, and expanded upon the existing design standards consistent with the new state statute. So as I just mentioned, the state statute allows us to have design standards. We had some minimal design standards for mobile homes before, but I expanded upon that and sort of better allowed us to interpret those standards. So added sort of definitions of a standard pitched shingled roof, meaning a roof with a pitch of 2 or more vertical units for every 12 horizontal, and which is covered with asphalt or fiberglass composition shingles, metal roofing or other materials, but specifically excluding corrugated metal or plastic roofing material. Likewise, attempted to define a little bit more what siding materials we would allow in the community. So wood clapboard, including engineered wood, but excluding plywood, vinyl, composite, cedar shingles, and fiber cement, and requiring, sorry.
You have another slide?
I do have one more, yes.
No, I just wondered if there was a slide with the information that you're relaying to us.
Yes, yep, I do have one more as well.
Yep.
And this is also within the draft that's included within your packet.
Yep.
Oh, and then requiring that siding needs to be placed horizontally. Then there are some changes related to mobile home parks as well. This is really to add clarification, so or address any conflicts or redundancies. So we added that there's some clarification that standards are in addition to any other relevant provisions. We changed the required amount of open space when you're doing an actual large mobile home park subdivision to be reserved. It was previously 10%. Although that was conflicting with another one of our local standards, section 18-134-3A. So I reduced it from 10% to 8%. That's a conversation that we can have, but it was really to correct areas where we had 2 conflicting standards sort of right next to each other. I also removed some standards because they are redundant to our site plan review standards that already exist and that mobile home parks would also be required to adhere to. Also related to complying with the state law. So the new state law says that you can't require minimum lot sizes within mobile home parks to be larger than the smallest minimum lot area that's allowable in the community. So we allow 2,000 square foot minimum lots in the village commercial district, which means in manufactured home parks on public sewer, at least, you can't have a minimum lot size higher than where you allow it differently elsewhere. So I reduced that to 2,000 square feet. Removed a reference to the overall density of a manufactured home park on septic. There was sort of an interesting, just again, question or interpretation piece that I had around, you could have, if using like a central subsurface wastewater disposal system or a community septic system, that's sometimes called, you could have smaller lot sizes within the manufactured home park of 12,000 square feet. I removed some reference to the overall density conflicting with that 12,000 square feet requirement because there isn't necessarily a specific health reason for the overall density to be different than the overall minimum lot area requirement. I guess I couldn't really wrap my head around why that would end up being different from like a environmental or safety perspective. And then again, this is to comply with state law. I shrank the setback requirements for lots within a mobile home park because a municipality can't require setbacks that have the effect of requiring lots that would be larger than those permitted under state law. So I changed our setback requirements to match our village commercial zoning district standards, which has the smallest setbacks in our community. And then all other standards are really to add clarification or to ease in interpreting the standards or addressing conflicting standards. In terms of the planning board's purview this evening, you'll recall that when you do ordinance amendments, the planning board's role is to take any public comment that there might be and then provide a recommendation to council around whether or not to adopt the amendment as presented or with any amendments that you might have. Your role isn't necessarily to be the final arbiter of these decisions this evening.
Right. So thank you, Isabel. Before we do open up the public hearing, do we have any questions from the board? All right, it sounds like we're just getting up to speed. Yeah.
I had a question about the construction standards piece.
Yep.
It seems like the purpose was to kind of remove the mobile home the term mobile and replace it with just kind of a more universal manufactured. Looking at that section seems to apply to manufactured housing. Is there conflict with like those construction standards and what like the design of I guess what you might consider a more typical mobile home might be, particularly with like the roof?
So that's a really good question. In fact, we are essentially creating standards for mobile homes that you would need to adhere to. So as was mentioned in the state law, municipalities can create those kind of design standards, and it might be a little bit different than what you might typically see in other communities. I also want to note that the design standards that I added were not above and beyond anything that we already had in Orono's ordinance. It was really an attempt to distill what our ordinance was already saying on my part, rather than add like new standards, if that makes sense.
Okay, other questions? You have anything to add? No. Okay, yeah. Other question? All right.
Of just one point, and unfortunately, I'm finding it hard to localize this. It's got an 8 in front of it, and it speaks of fire safety. Okay, so if we can find that.
Generally, which page are we talking about?
The second to last page, that's a follow. Okay.
Did you find it?
Yes.
Okay. At the end there of the first sentence, it says, made for fire safety within a mobile home park. That presumably becomes a.
Yes, thank you.
And then the other question I have is, this is sort of a somewhat different issue, but it's kind of odd to say that in cases where public water is available, fire hydrants shall be installed according to the plan approved by the town manager or designated representative of the town. It seems like the code enforcement officer always does this kind of thing. Should that just become the town code enforcement officer?
So it's actually typically our life safety inspector within the fire department that does that kind of fire hydrant responding to those kinds of questions. I think it's sort of 6 one way, half a dozen the other. Ultimately, that is the town manager's designee at this point. So it's, I would say, what you are more comfortable with. From a staffing perspective, usually what I prefer to say is the department itself. So if we were going to make the change that you're suggesting, I would probably just say the fire department's representative.
Okay.
What are our thoughts on that? Do you prefer to change that? Town manager or designee, that's really flexible as far as what staff is, but I think we're always gonna have fire department, and we're gonna have an inspector, so. What are your thoughts?
I would just leave it as is.
All right. Michael, you want-
Just leave it as, it's fine.
Are we okay? Or want more specificity? Bob, do you have a preference?
No.
Okay. John?
No.
Okay, I think we'll probably just leave it more flexible. Good point though, Krista. All right, other comments?
Well, I guess I have one other question, just in the whole area of mobile home parks, this whole section is still called mobile home parks. And does it need to change to manufactured home parks?
I noticed that today because I don't edit the titles in our ordinance. In this case, we probably should. So yeah, the relevant section should be changed to manufactured.
Very good catch. Anything else? All right, I'm gonna open up the public hearing. Invite members of the public to step up if you have any comments, concerns. Anybody online, Mitch? Last call. All right. Public hearing is closed. Any further discussion from the board? All right, it sounds like we're just getting up to speed with current law. So thank you, Isabel, for catching us up to where we should be. I think we're ready for a motion, because again, we're just making a recommendation to pass this on, I think with just the one suggested edit, correct? Yeah.
I move that we recommend the town council to approve this. With,
So, do we want to, he's given us.
did she?
Yeah,
Oh, no,
need
it's
again,
at the
so-
very end there.
yeah. That will
She-
cover us
Yeah.
with, just catch that one suggestion that
Okay.
Krista made.
I move that the Orono Planning Board forwards a positive recommendation for adoption of the land use ordinance amendments to Article 6, Section 18-171, Article 7, Section 18-205, 18-206, and 18-207 in order to better reflect the current process being followed by town staff and the planning board. This isn't the right one, is
Nope.
it? It's
I was gonna
not.
say, wrong one.
It ain't. It ain't.
The next one.
Okay.
Did I jump on ahead?
All right, now I have to remember what Krista said after all this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Try again.
Yeah.
I move that the Orono Planning Board forwards a positive recommendation for adoption of the land use ordinance amendments to Article 2, Section 18-31, Article 4, Section 18-106, Article 5, Section, where am I? 18-133 and Article 5, Section 18-134 in order to comply with LD 337, an act to amend the law governing the regulation of manufactured housing to increase affordable housing, clean up the definitions for manufactured housing homes units within the land use ordinance, and remove conflicting standards or inconsistencies with other sections of the land use ordinance, and whatever Krista said.
And can we specify that? So
What it-
Krista, your comment was
What?
the recommended change? Yeah, I just want to make sure we capture it in our
Manufactured park.
manufactured.
Manufactured homes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep. Correcting the two last references to mobile home parks. and
manufacturer, yes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Have that back.
Mhm.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Lisa. We made it. We have a motion, kind of a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, moving on. We have another public hearing. This one's public hearing and recommendation for a proposed amendment to the Orono Land Use Ordinance, Article 6, Section 18-171, and Article 7, Section 18-205, 206, and 207 to update the review procedures described in these sections to better reflect the current process being followed by town staff in the planning board, namely updating reference to the planning board's designated staff person, the town planner, rather than the code enforcement officer. So, Isabel, back to you.
Yeah, not a ton to say on this one, but I'll just go through this briefly. So, again, this is really to update the review procedures in both the site plan review and the subdivision sections of our ordinance, to clarify that the designated staff person for the planning board is the town planner rather than the code enforcement officer. This section hasn't been updated since around the year 2000, which would have been far before the town had ever had a hired planner. So just changing that to town planner or designee, because as our department grows, we may at some point also have other folks doing review. There's a couple of other changes that I'll run through briefly as well. So again, updating reference from code to town planner or designee as appropriate. I do want to note that in the site plan review procedures, we don't currently have timeframes for the initial completeness determination and public hearings. So following the planning board's flow charts that we reviewed back in November of 2023, I did add in the timeframes that are already referenced in those flow charts just to clarify. And then I also removed reference to how the meetings would be conducted, referencing the planning board's bylaws, where we already go through that in great detail. rather than spelling that out in the ordinance. And that's just to give us a little bit more flexibility if you ever get a new staff person, or just to be a little bit more nimble in the way that we come to meetings and the way that we conduct those meetings. I also added a step related to condition compliance. So as you know, we typically will adopt conditions of approval, and we didn't have anything in our ordinance previously that was a step that needed to be followed by folks. It was a practice, but not a specific ordinance piece that was spelled out. So I added that to our site plan review procedures. Then, this is a change that I would appreciate your feedback on. Currently, the sketch plan and pre-application conference for subdivisions is a requirement. And when we get these kind of things, the ordinance spells out that the planning board's role in that case is to determine if the subdivision is a major or minor subdivision, and also make relevant road classifications. So if they're building on an existing road or adding a new road. That's a little bit wonky to me, and I've had trouble with dealing with that in the past, because those definitions of major versus minor subdivision are not actually for the planning board to determine. We have specific definitions of those in our ordinance, so it's not subjective for the planning board. Same with the road classifications. Those are MDOT definitions that we also reflect in our ordinance. So there actually isn't a lot for the planning board to do at those pre-app conferences. And given that we have a staff team that reviews these applications, I am wondering that if you would be in support of making that sketch plan and pre-application conference for subdivisions optional rather than a formal requirement for major subdivisions as it currently exists, and a clarification that comments provided by the planning board at this stage, if the applicant decides to go through those, would be non-binding in nature, because typically the application is not well enough fleshed out at the pre-application phase for us to make binding comments. So for discussion.
Yep.
And I can go through I only have a couple more, so maybe we go through that and then have that conversation. For preliminary plan for major subdivision, which is 18206, and final plan for major subdivision, which is section 207, I again updated reference to the relevant staff or department, provided timeframes for initial completeness determination. And in this case, we had some specific submission contents with regard to plans and maps that I think are better suited for our planning board bylaws. First, because it references Mylars, which the Penobscot Registry of Deeds no longer accepts anyway. So we don't need to require those. Yes. And then, of course, at some point in the future, doesn't have to be today, we may want to go to a system where we are only accepting electronic applications. So I don't want to have to tie us to hard copies within the ordinance. I think that's far better suited for your bylaws, where we can be more nimble and adopt those as changes may necessitate with technology and such. And that
Does
is
that
all.
mean planning board, we all get tablets, is what you're telling us?
Maybe someday, and I don't want to hamstring us if that's the case to hard copies. So again, same process here. We're looking for your a public hearing, although this is fairly minor in nature, but a public hearing and then a recommendation to the council.
Again, same process will allow you to have comments, but first off, comments from or questions. I think your suggestion streamlines our process. Because again, if we're still trying to get over hurdles where Orono is difficult to deal with, I think that takes the sketch plan. That's one meeting. And then you got to wait another however long to go through that again. And so it adds an extra meeting where I would rather have staff spend the time with applicants. You know, again, other communities, I do a lot of municipal work, and Brewer has a tech review committee. So they go over applications in detail, and that's, as she talked about before, as our staff grows, our planning staff grows, then I think they would be better suited to deal with those initial issues before it even gets to us. So this is great. I think it'll be well received by applicants. Again, you remember that hopefully town staff is working out a lot of the hurdles for applicants even by the time it gets to us. So this, I think that's a welcome step in my mind. Yeah. Yeah. So,
I think some of these earlier steps go back to the days when we did not have a town planner.
yes, yeah,
And the planning board had to do everything.
right, right. I agree with you. Yep. Yeah, so either way, we've come a long ways. Yeah, so I guess any other comments? I fully support that, just in general to what Isabel presented and then what she wanted feedback. Any more questions on that? I'm gonna open it up, public hearing. Again, don't be shy, came all this way. I don't see the other applicant. This is your chance. Yeah, any comments? Mitch, nobody? All right.
Okay, I'd like to make one comment on a flow chart.
Yep.
And that is the site plan review process flow chart. And when we get most of the way down, we have I'll call it beige rectangle that says within days of the closure of the public hearing, the planning board shall render a decision on the application in accordance with the review standards. Okay, with it, and then in the other two flow sheets, we have in paren, but typically the same evening. And this is really the simplest thing where we're most likely to do it the same evening.
Yeah.
So
Good point.
that's, what, the next time you print this thing, maybe you want to change that.
Yes,
That makes sense.
that does make sense. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, last call. Gonna close the public hearing. Geez, any other comments on this one? Again, Krista's point is that's
Excellent.
the way it was. We just didn't have the support, and planning board did a lot of this work, but rather rely on our technical expertise in the planning department. So any other comments? We good? All right. Can I get a motion again? Yep, and I think it's on the,
Since I handed it to
oh,
Lisa
there we go.
before, I can
It was
finish it. I move that the Orono Planning Board forwards the position recommendation for the adoption of the land use ordinance amendments to Article 6, Sections 18 through 171, Article 7, Sections 18 through 205, 18 through 206, and 18 through 207, in order to better reflect the current process being followed by the town staff and the planning board.
All right, just to clarify, I think that's just 18-171, not.
Oh,
3.
dash,
I just
yes.
want to make sure that, just in case, I don't think we have 171 sections, but either way, so.
Thank you.
Yep, we're good. All right, we have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
Very good. Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right. I don't see any applicant for us, and I'm not gonna waste people's.
Sorry,
time.
they are on, they are
Oh,
on Zoom.
they are
They're
on
joining
Zoom.
Zoom.
Okay. Very good. Isabel, thank you for your patience, everyone. So Isabel, can you provide us a summary?
Yes, I can. Great. So we are moving on to 81 Orono Landing Road. This is a minor site plan review. Whoops, sorry. The applicants here are K&A Investments, which are Alex and Katie Kolb. Again, minor site plan review for the establishment of a homestay 2, which is how our ordinance defines a non-owner occupied short-term rental, as opposed to a homestay 1, which would be an owner occupied short-term rental. In some zoning districts, that is an allowable use. Within the FNA zoning district, which is the forest and agriculture, that is an allowed use with planning board review. This is tax map 15-2 lot 38, or the blue outlined parcel up on the screen. This is just a site plan rendering. So on the right side is Orono Landing Road with the lakeside on the rear. As you can see from that previous screen, this is a fairly small parcel. And I want to note that on our tax maps don't do the greatest job of actually showing how the lake has sort of moved closer to this so far. So this is a better rendering of that. With regard to land use and zoning, again, the proposed use, a homestay 2, is an allowable use in the FNA zoning district with planning board approval. You'll also note that this property is within the shoreland residential, or the limited residential shoreland district. Just so you know, this doesn't involve any new exterior construction or changes to the site that would require a shoreland permit, but it is within that area. Also, the property is a grandfathered non-conforming property with regards to minimum lot area and frontage requirements in the FNA zoning district, which the FNA zoning district typically requires about 4 acres of property. That is obviously not the case in this property and many of our camp properties. This property itself has about 6,000 square feet of lot area. Again, though, there will be no changes to any dimensional aspects of the site with this application: setbacks, lot coverage, lot size, etc. Also, there are no changes to the site which would necessitate a shoreland permit. Again, no construction or additional impervious area. So while this is in that zoning district, those standards are not applicable at this time because they are relevant only to new construction. So with regard to traffic, access, and parking, the applicant is proposing to utilize the existing single-family dwelling for the purpose of a short-term rental for people, vacationing or visiting the area. Therefore, traffic is anticipated to be consistent with that of a residential neighborhood. The site does provide adequate space for 2 off-street parking spots, which is the requirement under our off-street parking and loading standards, so that the renters can park the vehicles off the street. That driveway looks fairly small, but that is a scaled drawing that shows that they have enough space for 2 parking spaces. And I might let the applicant speak to that a little bit more, but he is aware that off-street parking for the 2 spots would be a requirement. With regard to utilities, the building currently utilizes a private well and is connected to an existing septic system, a holding tank of around 1,500 gallons or up to 5 people. However, and I'll talk about this in the conditions of approval, as with all dwelling units in Orono, the dwelling, including the short-term rental, would be limited to up to 3, no more than 3 unrelated people. The proposed change of use doesn't require any changes to the existing utilities, so just something to be aware of. With regard to other issues that the board would typically see, erosion control, stormwater management, etc., because this proposed use is not involving any expansion of the structure or any changes to impervious surface on the site, those other site plan review criteria typically reviewed, stormwater management, natural features, etc., are not applicable to this proposed project. And related to that, they have requested a waiver of all of the submission requirements that would only be relevant to new construction, surveys, topo maps, soil information, stormwater management and grading and erosion control plans, landscaping plans, parking and traffic circulation plans. It's fairly minimal, new sewer and other utility plans, and staff is in agreement since there's no building or site work being proposed. If the planning board is looking towards a favorable resolution on this project this evening, we do have 3 recommended conditions. Our 2 standard conditions around the approval being dependent upon the plans contained in the application. Any changes would need to return to the planning board, and then that noise shall be regulated in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 13, Article 2 related to noise control. The other thing I just want to say about that, because I got a question about this after our last planning board meeting, is that the noise ordinance in Orono is very complaint driven. So we put that as a condition of approval that applicants familiarize themselves with that. But unfortunately, the way that ordinance is written is that it does rely on complaints for the code enforcement officer or our relevant folks in police to actually respond to those things. So while we encourage applicants to be familiarized with themselves with that, we also encourage the public to familiarize themselves with that as well. And please call us if you have questions. And then finally, the unique condition is that the dwelling can only be rented to up to 3 unrelated persons at any given time to meet the ordinance limitation on occupancy for any dwelling unit outlined in the definition of a family found in section 1831. And that was a standard condition the last time you reviewed a short-term rental project as well. That is all from me. The applicant is here over the phone, but I do need to, there we go, promote him to speak if there are any other questions or if he wants to add anything.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the applicant, do you have anything to add to Isabel's presentation?
I guess,
No, I do not have anything to add. Thank you.
I just, sorry.
Yeah. The applicant, do you have anything to add to Isabel's?
I do not have anything to add. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So before we start the public hearing again, I'm going to open it up to questions from the board. And you're
I
up.
just, we said not more than 3 unrelated people. If they are related, if they're a biological family, they can be more than 3.
Yes, that is the case under our definition of a family in our ordinance. Yes.
Okay. For the applicant, Isabel did mention the parking requirement. I saw the correspondence in the application packet that you acknowledged that she made that point. I'm looking at the scale drawing and just eyeballing it. Those 2 parking spots, it would be end to end, correct? Not side by side. But it appears, because you have a full bathroom, it shows it's 8'6". That's the parking stall. And if you scale that off right, it looks like you have ample space for 2 cars, but I would like you to confirm that.
Yeah, that is correct.
All right. So we got that end-to-end parking. That's 2 cars. Any other questions from the board? All right, I am going to open up the public hearing again. Please step up to the podium, tell us who you are, and let us know what your concerns are. Again, if you would, we typically prefer that 5-minute rule. So.
You might have to turn the microphone on when you get up here. I'm sorry.
My name is Karen Pinkham. I am a year-round resident at 72 Orono Landing Road. And so I did just have a couple concerns I wanted to share with the board because there are approximately 10 properties, what I'd say properties of owners of properties that if you are looking at Orono Landing Road and the Villa Vaughn kind of branches off to the campground. So in that section, if you keep going, there's about 10 of us. 5 of us are year-round residents. 1 owner does have a short-term rental in her property, I believe. 3 of the properties are already current short-term rentals that are actively being advertised on Airbnb and Vrbo. So this would be a 4th one out of 10 properties. Now we have 4 Airbnbs. So some of my concerns that we've had over the years with the short-term rentals are they have had in the past short-term tenants go to the right-of-way area, that's kind of the little public area down there, and have left garbage strewn everywhere, including dirty diapers. They've broken picnic tables. This year alone, we've had a significant increase in traffic, and it could be campground traffic as well. We get a lot of the campers that come down on their golf carts. But we had a large party at one of the Airbnbs this year where there were approximately 20 vehicles. They took down a chain that was beside a no trespassing sign, drove over our neighbor's lawn. So that's concerning as a small community of neighbors. And obviously the noise, because again, we're a small community. If we've got a lot of renters down there, it's not uncommon for me to be in my backyard putting my daughter, I'm just having put my daughter to bed and I have to shut all of our windows because there's so much noise coming from the rentals. So those are some concerns. The other thing is the road is very narrow. I'm familiar with this site. It is going to be very difficult to get 2 cars parked into there, even end to end. And I did have a question about the map that they had drawn. Is that before the addition was put onto this property? Because there was an addition put onto that after the property was purchased. So I was just curious if that included that additional addition. The other concern I had was I do know there's a fire department right of way down there. And so if we've got 4 rental properties on that road with limited on-site parking and people are parking on the roads, what does that do for our emergency access to that water supply? So those are my concerns as a long-term resident, and I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to throw that back to the applicant. Can you answer the question, does the map you provided in the application include the recent improvements in that addition?
Okay, so we didn't actually add any sort of addition to the existing property or building. So I'm not sure exactly what she's asking about.
Okay, so you're telling us there's no addition, basically just some facade improvements and interior? Is that what it sounds like?
No, so we had to do some work to the foundation, and so there was a room off the side that was partly taken down to get underneath to be able to fix that rot and improve that, and then put back together. I believe that's what she's asking about, but there was no other improvements done to the building itself to expand it at all. It's the same footprint.
Right, because I don't think under current shoreline zoning, you can't increase a nonconformity. So that does make sense. I think our code office would have, if they inspected that, they would have caught that. You can't increase the footprint within the area where your place is. Okay. Thank you. So we talked about questions were about noise and parking. Again, looking at the driveway sketch you provided, it does appear that 2 cars can fit end to end. It might be a little tight, but it does appear that they will fit technically. Can you talk about, again, we have a noise ordinance in parking, that kind of thing, but you're listening to your neighbor, provide some concerns, and typically we, as a planning board, try to do the best job we can at listening to these concerns, and within our town's zoning ordinance, try to work with both sides. But can you address any of those comments that you just heard?
Yeah, very understandable, because we live in a small neighborhood as well. So any complaints, concerns can definitely, go to me directly. We don't anticipate any of that, but sometimes the Airbnbs, that can definitely happen. But no, we are, well aware that can happen. But we do hear that it's a potential that could happen. We don't anticipate it happening, but our door is always open. You can always let us know, and we can definitely take care of it. We own another Airbnb in China, Maine, which is a close-knit area as well around the lake on another camp road. So we have experience with this kinds of things, but yeah, we definitely don't want to disturb any neighbors, especially in close proximity as it is there. So definitely understandable.
Isabel? Yeah, thank you. Isabel, can you at least touch on the current town ordinances? Because some of our, this would be, it sounds like a lot of those concerns would be a job for our code enforcement staff, but can you touch on that? Or Mitch is ready.
I thought I would address this. The town council has just updated an ordinance for disorderly properties.
Yeah.
That a lot of this, the noise ordinance, unfortunately, is written in a way in which is very difficult to enforce and is really more aligned with events that are going to happen, construction or business, right? So because of that, they looked at the disorderly property ordinance to incorporate things like noise, things like parking, things like activities that are creating havoc. And there are, it's all identified in there. The answer to that is called 866-4000. If any of those things are going on, parking is also one of them. If there's parking that's happening that's blocking a road, that would bring, call 866-4000. The police will come and look at it, and there is a fine structure in place, and that goes for any resident. It's not just rentals. So basically, the first time it happens, the fine goes to the occupant that's there, and then after subsequent ones go to the occupant and the owner if it's not the same person. So they've tried to address some of that with some of the other issues that we've had in all of our residential neighborhoods around rentals. So, and I also will say that staff has had some conversations with folks out on our landing road about some of these issues, and we are looking into some things. I'm not sure currently how that is addressed with parking on the road, what the on-road parking situation is there. But typically, if there isn't enough room, we will limit on-road parking.
What kind of signage is there?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that on top of my head. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
we are looking at that we've had a conversation with some other residents out there to look at some of that stuff and are aware of that. But in any case, I would encourage anybody that's having any concerns about noise, disorderly property, disorderly activities to reach out. 866-4000 is the number, and it's a non-emergency number. If it's an emergency, call 911. But non-emergency line, and it will get through and end up with our police, and then they would investigate and go from there. So
Thank you. By the way, for the record, Mitch Stone, our Assistant Town Manager.
sorry about that.
Can I ask you a question, Mitch? Is that number staffed 24/7?
So that number is staffed during the day for us, and then it goes to a non-emergency, the Penobscot, oh gosh, it's a division of the 911, but it doesn't go through to 911. It comes as a different ring. So it goes to the same people that answer 911, but it is triage. It's a non-emergency.
So at 12:30 at night?
Yep.
Somebody
You
will
can call it and
Yeah.
you'll go through it, and it's a little bit more cumbersome. It doesn't go right to a person. It will give you a phone tree, and it will tell you what to push, and then you can get to somebody, and then they will dispatch that off. But like I said, if it's an emergency, call 911.
So just for the applicant, again, as a landlord, you said you had other properties, but this is an issue that Orono's been dealing with. A lot of it is in response to something that happened in my neighborhood where a person got beat up. But if you're not aware of it, these are newer rules. So there's, the property owner, the landlords share responsibility, or homeowner, but trying to do a better job with that. So now there is more of an outlet for residents, but some of your concerns, I probably rely on town ordinances to implement, because, and again, this is interesting because you see in the news a lot that short-term rentals, there's a lot of discussion all over the place with Airbnbs. I mean, Bar Harbor's in the news a bunch, but all over the state, because the transition to the short-term rentals, it's hitting a lot of people. But currently, this is an allowed use in our F&A zone. So understand your concerns. It is an allowed use, and now hopefully with the new ordinance that Mitch just mentioned, that you'll have a little bit more recourse if something happens. So,
Mr. Chair, can I jump in here as well, just
May.
briefly? So with our Airbnb homestay definitions, we do require there to be a local person to respond to complaints. You have to either reside within, I believe it's an hour drive, to be able to respond quickly to complaints, or have a local property manager. In this case, the applicant is going to be acting as their own local property manager. So I think he offered to his door is open. He is the local property manager in this case.
got it.
So.
Okay. Other comments? Anybody else want to step up? Mitch, anybody online? do we want to reference? I'm trying to remember the letter, that we received from somebody that couldn't be here this evening
Oh, that's up
The-
to you. We included a letter from an abutter in your
from the
packet.
part.
If
Yeah.
you folks would prefer me to read that into the record, I'm happy to, but it is also in your packets and posted to the public planning board site if you're curious.
It was in our packet. I'm hoping you read it. There's the concerns mentioned here are similar to what you mentioned. They're also, year-round residents and, noise, the neighborhood concerns that she expressed, similar sentiments. But again, knowing that we have some changes in our new rental ordinance or whatever, disorderly property, I guess. I forget what it's called, but yep. So we do have more protections. So, all right. Any other comments from the public? Can you, sorry, this is all recorded. If you could step up. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah.
I just have a general question overall for the planning board. Is there ever thought or discussion about limiting the number of short-term rentals in neighborhoods? Just in general, I didn't know if that had ever been discussed
So
or food for thought.
funny, we're actually we're nearing the finish line actually on redoing the town's comprehensive plan, which all the ordinances that this planning board has to make sure applicants follow. We're reviewing that. It has to be done every 10 years. Isabel has been our fantastic guide through this process. We've met through, with a committee for every month for, over a year and a half now. So we've been talking about that. And these types of issues are part of our, what we've been reviewing. We did one in 2015. And I mean, things change 10 years. So you look at what the town's doing and you try to amend or change things if needed. And this short-term rental thing, again, is a pretty big issue. So that's the setup. Isabel, I'm going to pass it to you to just talk about discussions within our committee and what we're talking about, knowing that you still have opportunities for public comment because the Comprehensive Plan Committee is going to have another public hearing. So there's an opportunity for you to weigh in there. And then once it moves from our committee, then it'll go to council. So there's more opportunities for public comment for you to get your opinion noted. But Isabel, if you could summarize what we're doing now, that would help.
Yeah, so we're kind of in the phase of making formal recommendations, and I want to pull up the actual.
Yeah, because we've been spending a long time. So you take stock what the town is doing, all the land types and all the things we've got going on. Then you look at we get a lot of input from the public, and then we start looking at goals and objectives. And the step we're on now is action steps. And Isabel and with staff input is responsible for a lot of the action steps. And as a committee, we've only seen the draft, so we haven't discussed it a bunch, but I think.
Yeah, so there's a variety of conversations about action steps, including sort of establishing minimum thresholds for compliance with safety standards, addressing some of these comments that have already been worked on by council because that was sort of a shorter term issue. So at least some of that was already discussed. And in general, we're looking at promoting, year-round housing specifically for families. So we don't have a specific action step that says formally, limit Airbnbs or short-term rentals specifically. But I think in general, our goals are leaning towards promotion of family housing within the community. And
again, if you'd like to provide comment, there's public hearings that you can come in and voice your opinion. Thank you, Isabel. Any other comments from the public before I close the hearing? All right. Close the public hearing and limit comments to the board. Are there any remaining questions?
Just clarification, Karen mentioned about parking on the street. And then Mitch clarified that there is no parking on the street, but there's no. So there's no signage that says no parking this side, no parking that side, or
Not currently, at least, right?
because with everybody, the default is the street when you can't get in your driveway. We all do it.
No, I've been out there. I know how narrow that street is. I know where, the chain to the access for the fire department and all that. So, yeah, there's not a lot of room up there, actually. Further discussion from the board.
I just had a question. Is there any value in seeking further clarification on how big that parking actually is? Based off of the drawing and the kind of focus of the complaints or the focus of the abutters feedback?
Yeah, good question. So I'm assuming it's scaled up. So you saw it.
The math doesn't.
Correct. There's
Yeah.
no dimension for that whole side
Mhm.
that parallels the driveway. But if it's to scale and you look at that 8'6", I think it's the bathroom. And then you double that up, that's 2 parking spaces. So just from
I
a
think it's the
scale.
question of scale for me.
Correct. But
That
Isabel mentioned its scale drawing? Yeah. So I just looking at that, and the applicant has told us that it will fit and that the scale is accurate. I was okay with that.
Okay.
But it's a hand drawn,
Yeah.
but I was looking at the 8'6", the bathroom, and doubling that up.
And it also has.
Yeah.
Some inconsistencies with
Yeah.
it's 19.6 here, but
Mhm.
also just the kitchen is 19.6 plus the bathroom.
Yeah.
So
All right, we're gonna put it to you one more time. The applicant, you're guaranteeing that 2 cars fit end to end, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a question, could we put that as a condition that he has to provide the actual length of the driveway?
Sure. I mean, that's easy, just tape it off. Yeah, there's a little bit of, again, a question, just making sure the scale's right, if you would. We're gonna have, in our recommendations, if you could scale that off or, just use a tape and give us the dimensions of that driveway.
Okay.
All right. Further comments? All right, I think I'm ready for a motion. Anybody want it?
I'll do it. Okay, I move to approve the minor site plan application of K&A Investments LLC.
Sorry. We need to vote on waivers before we do this. I forgot. I apologize. Process is they requested waivers. We have to act on those and then we review that. Sorry for that. I can forget that. So I need a motion on the waiver request first, then we'll vote on the application. So. Want that one too? Just move to approve the.
Yeah,
waiver
I move
request?
to approve the waiver request.
Yep, I think that's about as simple as we have. Any, well, can I have a second?
Second.
All right, further discussion? All those in favor? Again, this is all interior, pretty simple project. All right,
Okay.
now you're up again.
All right, I move to approve the minor site plan application of K&A Investments LLC received July 23, 2025 to establish a homestay -2 at 81 Orono Landing Road, tax map 12-2, lot 38, per the findings of fact dated August 20, 2025, subject to the following conditions. There are 2 listed relevant standard conditions, and there are now 2 unique conditions. Do I need to say those?
One's on the record, but why don't you
Okay.
state the one that we just added?
Okay, the unique condition, the second one is that we would like the actual measurement of the driveway.
Yeah, provided to town staff.
Provided
Yeah.
to town staff.
Yep. Are we okay with that? Good. We got a motion. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Any further?
I'll second.
Thank you, Michael. Any further discussion? Yeah.
What turns out 2 cars will not fit in there?
I just want to clarify, I think if anything, like not an additional vehicle, but there's more space, at least on the lawn area, than what is actually being shown as designated parking area. So in that case, the expectation, at least from my end, and feel free to correct me from the planning board perspective, would be that they utilize some of that lawn area before the deck. There's sort of a deck on the side, a small lawn area and parking. So that would be my expectation.
Yeah, I expect that the gravel driveway as shown, and they'll confirm it with measurements that it should fit, but yeah, good question. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second, correct? Yeah, all right, any further discussion? All those in favor? Very good. All right, moving on. Next up, town planner report. Can you let us know what's going on? Comprehensive plan update, what's on tap for next month? That kind of thing.
Yeah, sorry, you have a bit of a presentation by way of the comp plan, just to give a little bit of an overview, because I haven't really checked in with the board in quite a while.
Yep.
So I just want to give you an overview of some of the public feedback that we've heard thus far, and then I'll talk about next steps and what's going on. So, thank you. So then I'll talk about next steps and what's coming up. So we had some council feedback already, but in general, I just want to go through setting the stage. What is a comprehensive plan? What we're looking at, what we've heard from the public, and then I will give you a little bit of an overview of what's next. So just to reiterate, I think you're aware of this by now, but a comprehensive plan is a long range, really a 10 to 12-year look at various topics that end up impacting a community's character, its growth, and its fiscal position. It's also a data-driven guide to policy and programming decisions, as well as public investment. And the ideal situation is that it's a shared vision for a community's future. So the comprehensive plan is I will say step one. It's a very broad document. It in turn, though, typically ends up recommending other plans and studies. So neighborhood master plans, site-specific master plans, economic development, market analyses, traffic studies, things like that. Those in turn really end up impacting town ordinances and then other policies and programming decisions of the town, including things like prioritizing maintenance of sidewalks or roads or where to site new public buildings, right? So all of these things sort of grow out of the comp plan, although the comp plan is a very broad document because it's intended to cover 10 to 12 years. So in terms of a framework pyramid, how you might think of this is our first step in the process was really trying to understand community values. Those are those core principles embraced by the community that inform that vision. The community vision statement is a high-level statement that describes the kind of community that Orono wishes to be in the future. And then we have some more specific aspirational statements that help make the community vision a reality. More specific direction and some objectives about how those goals will be carried out. And then finally, the action steps, which, may change throughout the 10 to 12 years of this plan, but are really the specific steps that the town and its nonprofit partners, so the land trust, the university, some of these other folks, will take to actually implement the goals and vision of the plan. These are all of the topics that are addressed within the comp plan. So economy, housing, agriculture and forestry, history and culture, recreation, transportation, natural and water resources, public facilities and services, population and demographics, and perhaps most pertinent to this board is the land use section, because there's a very specific chapter around land use and ordinance amendments that should occur. So why do we plan? With comp plans, only communities with a state certified plan can create certain policies. So if you've heard of an impact fee ordinance or zoning ordinances, preference with state grant programs. So there are more than, I think there are now about 40 different grant programs that communities with a state certified comprehensive plan get some additional preference for. And then it also guides state investment in infrastructure towards certain areas. So the state actually prioritizes how they invest and invest in roads to designated growth areas within the comprehensive plan. And then again, most importantly, it really creates a community-driven vision for the future. The ideal situation, and I think maybe you see this in the past, is that when we get to the end of the lifetime, this 10 to 12 year mark of a comp plan, perhaps the community is feeling like there needs to be an updated vision. I think we've started to sort of get that over the last few months. There needs to be an updated vision. We don't agree with what's going on. The comp plan is the place for that, as you know, and as we have reiterated. That is the place for the vision. And then we do need to go through an ordinance amendment process post comp plan adoption to actually make sure our ordinances reflect that vision. So that's how that all sort of intersects together. This is an overview of the steps we've taken thus far. As you can see, we're kind of now in the last phase, or I guess entering the last phase as of next month. We're really wrapping up the plan. We anticipate that a final draft will be available for review in early September, and that there will be a public hearing on the draft comprehensive plan in October. And that date is to be finalized, but we will make sure that that gets out to the public. The public hearing phase is a requirement, but this also will need to be adopted by council, who will hold their own public hearing on the comp plan as well. So at least 2 public hearings coming up. Okay, so just to give you a little overview of what we've heard so far, we had an online survey back when we first started this that had 244 responses. Back almost a year ago, October of last year, we had 2 public kickoff meetings that really ran through what essentially the presentation that I just gave you in 5 minutes. We spent a lot of time on that at those October kickoff meetings. We had 26 attendees there over 2 days, and they sort of answered some really broad-based questions around Orono, what they love and want to keep as is, and what they think needs to change. Then, using the feedback that we got from the online survey and our October kickoff meetings, we had some more in-depth topic exploration meetings in November and December, one specifically related to housing, and that was really where we started to get some feedback around boosting family housing specifically, economy in downtown, active transportation, and then outdoor recreation and natural resources. Then in January, the town manager actually ran sort of a Your Voice Matters visioning event where we got the feedback that's on those posters in the back. That bright colored feedback is everything that we heard from folks at that meeting. We also, it says upcoming here, we had a future land use workshop just recently last month where we got more great feedback. Around 25 to 30 folks attended that and provided some very specific feedback around where growth and development should be incentivized and where we might want to not disallow growth and development per se, but perhaps not incentivize it at least. And that was really how we asked for some pretty specific feedback around growth and rural areas. So what we've heard throughout this process, really we started to hear this set of community values. It was things like community cohesion, making sure that we're making decisions together and in a way that uplifts everyone. Wanting a diversity of businesses and economic vitality. So filling vacant downtown buildings, creating more like cultural events and things to do in town, and making our downtown area feel quite vibrant. Then it was around housing options. So again, increasing some family housing, providing a diversity of housing options so that different ages and lifestyles can be here in Orono. Increasing and maintaining public service capacity. A lot of this was around some of the things that we've already talked about tonight. So making sure that we have adequate staffing to be able to perhaps proactively respond to complaints rather than reactively responding to noise ordinance complaints, for example. But also things like increasing potentially the recreation programs that we offer, things like that. And then a big one was reducing vehicular traffic and related to that, increasing alternative modes of transportation. So making it feel safe to walk downtown, making it feel safe to bike through Orono, and actually making sure that we have interconnected infrastructure to make those kinds of trips possible. And then also potentially bolstering our public transit. I already mentioned that we had some pretty specific priority focus areas. So housing, active transportation, the economy and downtown vibrancy, outdoor recreation, and natural resources. Again, community cohesion, really the ability of a community to function together harmoniously. This was mentioned by 29 of 113 responses, or about 25% of the folks that were in attendance at our event back in January. Again, diversity of businesses and economic vitality. So really focusing on attracting a wide variety of businesses. And specifically what we heard at this meeting was around attracting job creators of like more than 10 employees. Then also increasing our general economic vitality, so filling vacant buildings. I didn't mention this, increasing feet on the street downtown, so more people living, working, and playing downtown, really making sure that downtown feels like a place that is relevant to everyone. And we asked some fairly specific questions around what folks wish was within a 10-minute walk from their house. As you can see here, many folks think that we're missing a neighborhood grocery store or a general store. And then 41% said a restaurant, coffee shop, or bar. And then attracting retail and service businesses was voted number 3 strategy that would most improve quality of life on our online survey. So again, housing options, expanding housing options for all incomes and ages was voted the number 1 strategy that would most improve quality of life. That's sort of related to the conversation that we had this evening around making sure that that's year-round housing options. A lot of the conversations that we've had was around missing middle or starter home construction. The council has been calling that attainable housing, so things that are attainable to folks that we're looking to attract to this area. And then because in our initial data analysis phase, we've seen that we've had a pretty sharp decline over the past 20 to 30 years really of family housing in town. A lot of families that used to live here have either, they don't have kids in their home anymore. And what we're finding is that we have really lost a large percentage of family housing in the community. So trying to bring that back. Again, some responses to our online survey were directly calling out enhancing or maintaining service capacity as a need in a variety of different ways: public works and roadway maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, water and sewer utilities, recreation programs, and police and fire protection. And then many responses were just sort of like addressing noise, but that would also require an increase in service capacity to accommodate that, a little bit more specific suggestion. Improving bicycle infrastructure in town was actually voted the number 2 strategy that would most improve quality of life. And then some others more specific responses were just broadly and generally encouraging the construction of sidewalks and trails and advocating for the expansion of transit. And then 74-ish% of our responses to the online survey said that walkability and pedestrian infrastructure was very important to them. So we had asked very, somewhat important, somewhat unimportant, and then not at all important. 74% said very important, not just somewhat. So that's interesting. That being said, that's sort of where we are now. As we're moving forward, we have now defined our growth and rural area boundaries. Those are fairly loose boundaries until we go through an actual ordinance update. So at least right now, they don't necessarily follow property lines. As in the 2015 plan, it's a general area that we're hoping to encourage growth and a general area that we're hoping to keep fairly rural. Those boundaries need to be a little bit more defined through a zoning ordinance, zoning map really update process, or we'll get some more specific public feedback. We anticipate, again, that a draft will be available for review in early September. We are wrapping up developing the actual recommendations of the plan, those goals, objectives, and actions that I talked about. But at this point, we're kind of just looking for some general questions or feedback if you have any, as I'm finalizing that draft.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does the DOT Corridor 2, whatever they're going to do, how does that mesh with what you guys are planning? I went to one of those meetings and I haven't heard anything about what's happening with that.
Oh, the Route 2 corridor
Yeah,
project. Yeah, so the Route 2 project, as you can kind of infer from some of the values that I was talking about, is sort of intrinsically tied to a lot of the goals and
Right.
objectives. When we had our, I believe it was our active transportation meeting, we gave folks Orono bucks and we said, use these Orono bucks and spend them on transportation improvements. And the number 1 bang for your buck project that accomplished most folks' goals in the room was that Route 2 corridor project. In terms of an update for you, I might have to turn to Mitch, but I believe it is pending full funding by council. It is sort of a once in a lifetime investment. So we've gone through this planning phase, and then the next phase is actually funding the full infrastructure. But maybe you can provide more specifics.
Sure. Mitch Stone, Assistant Town Manager. So where it is right now is the plan, the initial planning phase went through and it was accepted and the council accepted it. And the next step to this whole thing would be getting funding through the to do preliminary engineering. As everybody understands, that funding comes from the federal government and lots of things have changed. So realistically, we're at the mercy of when those funding sources come available, how that would work. We have this whole project is enormous. I mean, when you're talking about a $30 million project, that's, a lot of resources. I will tell you that there is, we were at almost the same time or just before we started to do this, we were given $3 million CDS funding to work on pedestrian and bike safety in the downtown area, actually from the bridge to Kelly Road. And we are working with DOT right now to really look at how we can use that money as a kind of a pre to the Route 2. So taking the planning that we've done there and kind of scale it down to use that 3 million and looking at starting in the downtown area. And that way, when we get to the Route 2, we'll have some of that done and use that $3 million that is for us to use through the DOT. We'll kind of defray some of that cost. It's a long-term project. It's going to take a long time. And so there's going to be this, I mean, it's hard because you get planning and you get everybody excited about it. And then the wheels of all the funding and all that take a little time. So it's not off the table. It's just going through the process, and we end up in line with everybody else that has one of these planning studies. So hopefully that's a good update for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Isabel on the comp plan?
I might just share the future land use map if you don't mind, just so that you kind of have an idea of what we're looking at. Okay. So this is the most up-to-date version. Essentially anything that is either light green or dark green is a rural area, and then the dark green is a critical natural area, so that has some specific habitat value. Everything else, yellow, orange, purples, and pinks, and blue and red and brown, is sort of the designated growth area of the plan. And that doesn't mean that this is going to change magnificently. In some areas, the vision is actually for fairly limited growth or almost no growth, but just maintaining what we already have and making sure that that's as vibrant as possible. And then in some of these other areas, I'm thinking about this, what we're currently calling Orono West area, west of 95. It sort of has some development potential, especially if utilities were expanded that way. And so that might be an area that's sort of ripe for some significant growth, pending the expansion of utilities. Then we've these numbers, they're referring to Ayers Island. The former public works site is number 2. And this is that site of the former subdivision that we looked at back probably about 9 months ago now. Just so you're aware, that preliminary approval has now expired, but still potentially a site that's ripe for some development. But maybe more of a concentrated development giving or a contract zone or something else, given the as the planning board perhaps correctly pointed out, some of the development constraints with the topography and some of the other things going on that site. So those are sort of what we're calling our catalyst sites that might have some more contract zoning potential or need further master planning on, but might be ripe for development. So that's the draft as it stands right now, in terms of where we're trying to incentivize it and where we might want to discourage, perhaps.
Thank you, Isabel. Any comments on that question? Thank you.
Okay.
What's up for next month?
We do have 2 home occupations that will be coming next month. And I may have another ordinance draft change as well. Also, just as a reminder, we are not having a meeting in October, so we'll have September and then a month off.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, last up, adjournment. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, second. Nice, any discussion? All those in favor? See you next month.
Next month.
Can always move that.